Live on accident.
VacationWeek.com. Enjoy the ease of booking your vacation with these prepaid discounted gift cards.
The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the program's participants and do not necessarily reflect those of station staff, management, and advertisers.
Liberalism is back in style. Welcome to the evolution.
What if you knew Fox News was just lying to you? How could you watch when you know?
He was voted Variety Entertainer of the Year in the Excellence in the Arts Award. And is one of the highest Arbitrum, now Nielsen-rated talk radio hosts in Las Vegas. He is also a refreshing voice of logic and reason. Live from the entertainment capital of the world, Doug Basham.
And good morning, my fellow wokes and Republican jokes. Thanks for joining me today. My name is Doug Basham, and welcome to the Doug Basham Show right here on KSHP in Las Vegas and on social media, and to a genuine demonstration of excellence in broadcasting. Hey, everybody. Great to see you all again. I am Doug Basham, card-carrying member in good standing of the Enemy Within Brigade, also known as one radical leftist lunatic who needs to be handled by the American military, and now just might be. And to reiterate my sentiment from yesterday and the day before and likely days to come, maybe weeks, as much as I hate to admit it, Donald Trump was right. He spent the last 4 years telling America how shitty it was, and then on Tuesday night, America proved him right. So welcome to day 3 of Morning in America, morning spelled with a U, of course, as true patriots who truly love this country grieve the loss of the great American experiment in self-governance and democracy. Hey, how's that for an uplifting opening?
It's time to decide the 2024 champions.
Yeah, it even triggered a commercial. Like they say, sometimes the truth is just butt ugly. My website is DougBasham.com, last name spelled B as in blunder, something America did on Tuesday, ASHAM as in mayhem, which is what will surely follow. DougBasham.com, my email, Doug@DougBasham.com. That said, I extend a warm yet dismayed welcome to those of you listening on KSHP, AM 1400 and 107.1 FM on your radio dial here in Las Vegas. We're also broadcasting on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, TikTok, and of course, Twitter/X. Actually, we're not broadcasting on TikTok today. I got kicked off on Monday, but I'm being allowed to return this coming Monday. Now, if you go to my website, again, DougBasham.com, you will discover it's all of one page. That's it. At the top, you'll find the show's logo. Underneath, 10 links, most to my social media sites, also one to contact me via email. Now, the two sites I'd like to call your attention to the most are, 1, my YouTube page, and 2, my TikTok page. On my YouTube page, I would respectfully ask you hit the subscribe button. On TikTok, please hit the red follow button. Now, if you would like to watch the show live and not just listen to it, reason being when I play clips, I don't play audio clips, I play video clips. Also because this face was just made for television, as you can plainly see. From my website, go to my YouTube, Facebook, or X pages. And if I happen to violate YouTube policies and they suspend my stream mid-show, just go back to my website, then to my Facebook, or to my X page. 221-7283 is our caller number here at the station, folks. If you would like to talk on the radio somewhere in our second half hour together, that's 702-221-SAVE, as in Save Our Democracy, something we failed to do on Tuesday, and miserably. And now, on to what I've started calling our broken news for the day. I think we'll begin today with a segment that, I don't know, might become a regular feature on the show. If it does, I think I will call it simply Today in Our New President. Here's this show's first installment.
The big beneficiary of the wars, these war hawks, they want to draft your kids to die in wars, and they will never fight themselves. Liz Cheney wouldn't fight. I'll go with her. I'll go to the Middle East. I'll go wherever she wants, and we'll fight. She doesn't have the guts to fight. She's all talk and no action.
Really? At almost 80 years of age, he'd go to the Middle East and fight. Just like when he said he'd run into a school in the middle of a mass shooting without a gun. But yeah, he's ready to deploy to the Middle East. However, when he wore a younger man's clothes and was in his 20s and was actually capable of serving his country in uniform, Cadet Bone Spurs fabricated/lied about a medical condition to avoid serving. Ironically, his bone spurs never seemed to interfere with his golf game. This is the same guy who wouldn't debate Kamala Harris a second time, who canceled interviews with NBC, CNBC, and even a friendly event with the NRA. But now, at 78 years of age, Donald Von Schützenpants is ready to race out of the dugout and lead his team to a World Series victory?
Oh, put me in cold. I'm ready to play. Look at me. I can be center field.
Yes, indeed, folks. Nothing like a little bathroom humor to loosen things up a few days after American voters made the biggest mistake in their nation's history. Although loosen up may not have been the best choice of words, then again, maybe they were the exact right words. If Tuesday's results didn't give you the runs, I frankly don't know what will. Now on to perhaps the most disgusting thing I've seen and heard since Tuesday's election. Well, other than the result itself. Nick Fuentes is a political pundit and live streamer who promotes white supremacy, misogyny, and anti-Semitism. Most call him a neo-Nazi. He's a former YouTuber, but his channel was permanently terminated in February of 2020 for violating YouTube's hate speech policy. And I get kicked off for playing a song. Fuentes has promoted conspiracy theories against Jewish people. He has denied the Holocaust, and he has called for a holy war against Jews. And get this, Fuentes self-identifies as a member of the incel movement. That's not something anyone normally admits to. And not that I care, but I suspect Fuentes is gay. One time he said, quote, "What's gayer than being like, I need cuddles, I need kisses, I need to spend time with a woman," end quote. I guess I'm gay. I like cuddling with women, I like kissing women, I like spending time with women. I'm gay, at least according to Nick Fuentes. This is what the smug, arrogant, snot-nosed little prick had to say after Tuesday's election, when it was anticipated and even hoped that women would save our democracy. And as you listen to this, consider the fact that this guy is considered to be a right-wing influencer.
The feel when you're totally not pressed. The feel when we control your bodies. Hey, bitch, we control your bodies. Guess what? Guys win again, okay? Men win again. And yes, we control your bodies. Hi, I'm your Republican congressman. Hi, I'm your Republican congressman. It's your body, my choice. And men, women again. Men win again. There will never, ever be a female president. Never. There will never be a female president, ever. It's over. Glass ceiling. Dude, it's a ceiling made of fucking bricks. You will never break it. Your stupid face keeps hitting the brick ceiling. We will keep you down forever. You will never control your own bodies. You will never be the president of the global empire. Never gonna happen, sweetie. Your body, our choice. No more abortions. Yeah, that's right. No more abortions. No more food stamps. Sorry, honey. Project 2025 is back on the menu, and there's none of any of that.
So, this vulgar, vile piece of human excrement is a self-confessed incel, involuntarily celibate, can't get laid. So, would you get into trouble if you cut off his nutsack and trouser snake? Although I imagine it's probably more like a trouser worm. Look him straight in the eye and say, your balls, your worm, my choice. And did I mention, 2 years ago this month, Fuentes, along with American rapper Kanye West, met with former U.S. and President-elect Donald Trump for a private dinner. After which Trump said about Fuentes, quote, I like him, he gets me. And after he took some heat for this vile display, Fuentes responded with this.
It's almost like they like it. They film themselves on TikTok huffing and puffing and crying. It's okay. Yeah. It's like you're a fucking idiot. I mean, when men lost, you know what we did? We raged. When men lost in 2020, we went out there and we went to the Capitol and we said, F the government. And it was awesome. People were running through the hallways with American flags. It was like Braveheart. It was like the Patriot. We were beating the shit out of journalists, kicking their cameras, kicking them in the face. People were beating up cops. People were lifting up barricades and pushing it against the cops. Cops were getting their faces smashed against the door. Ah! Trump supporters punching them in the face, punching them in the stomach. And, you know, like no one died. A couple of them died like a week later. They blamed it. A bunch of them killed themselves. You know, but like that is what happens when men lose. We say, all right, Mr. President, say less. We will be there in exactly 48 hours. We're bringing walkie-talkies.
Sometimes, folks, there are not words adequate enough to accurately describe some of the absolute filth we have to share this nation and its oxygen with. No words. And needless to say, this human pile of shisky is just thrilled Donald Trump won Tuesday's election. Again, no words. And you would not believe, or maybe you would, some of the responses his followers posted after these comments. A whole bunch of them said, yes, your body, my choice. Another suggested Fuentes start selling hats with your body, my choice emblazoned on them. Another wrote, we own your bodies, bitches. I can't. I just can't. As if this week hasn't been depressing enough. And these are the same incels who would tell you America is exceptional when they are living proof it is not. Or at the very least, America needs to do some serious house cleaning before it truly is. Okay, moving on. Fun question for you. You ready to play? Yeah? Since Tuesday's travesty of an election, every Democrat I've seen or heard, me included, and justifiably so, have been wetting our pants, fearful of just how destructive another 4 years of Donald Trump will be to our country, our democracy, and our Constitution. But here's my question. How many Republicans have you seen or heard that are wetting their pants, nervous or frightened as to what we Democrats will do in the next 2.5 months, while we still have a commander-in-chief with presidential immunity, and we have the Senate? I like to think I keep my nose pretty close to the news grindstone, and I haven't seen a one. Not one. What I have seen are Democrats falling all over one another, saying we have to have a peaceful transfer of power and turn our constitutional republic over to someone who said our Constitution should be terminated. First, peaceful. Why did they keep referring to that? I'd bet the farm the only chance of a non-peaceful transfer of power we would have had would have been if Trump had lost. So let's remove that word from the equation. Peaceful. But then their repeated insistence that we have to sacrifice our Constitution so we can feel good about honoring our Constitution, as you know, and I've been pretty vocal about it, that makes zero sense to me. Think about it. Repeat it to yourselves. Ponder it. Consider it. Question it. We're going to sacrifice our Constitution so we can say we honored our Constitution? And I'm not saying that there's necessarily much else they can say, but maybe, I don't know, maybe just leave that part out. It reminds me of the first assassination attempt on the orange hairball, you know, the one from which Trump seemingly recovered in record time. Seriously, people who have their ears pierced take longer to recuperate. And I said at the time that even though what I was about to say would be considered by many to be controversial, I highly suspected most Democrats and even many Republicans felt the exact same way and would fully agree with me, at least privately. So many of them were quick to issue statements that said, violence is not the way to solve our political differences, which I agree with wholeheartedly. And they said that again after the second occurrence, which never really materialized into an actual assassination attempt. But you know, assassination attempt sounds much more ominous and helpful in a campaign than saying the perp had concepts of an assassination. But after both incidents, Democrats then went on to say things to the effect of, I'm glad Donald Trump survived. I wish him a speedy recovery. No, you didn't, and no, you don't. This is just simple math and even simpler logic. If you know in your heart of hearts, like most informed patriotic Democrats do, and again, many Republicans, what a clear and present danger and existential threat Trump is to our democracy, why on earth would you want him to survive? And why would you be happy he did? Answer, you don't and you're not. Now, I wouldn't expect any politician to actually say this quiet part out loud, but why not just stop after violence is no way to settle political differences? So, if you're tempted to ask me if I too am glad Trump survived, you already have your answer. In fact, I may be the only one who will be completely honest with you. And when J.D. Vance said this at the RNC train wreck,
and then look at that photo of him, defiant, fist in the air, when Donald Trump rose to his feet in that Pennsylvania field, all of America stood with him.
Let me just say that I, along with millions of other truly patriotic Americans, were not with him, are not with him, have never been with him, and never will be with him. Clear? Moving on, I got to tell you, this week starting on Tuesday night has been a most challenging one for me. Normally, I record several hours of news a day. And while I'm recording and watching, I start seeing clips I want to use in the show. I make a note of where they are so I can find them when I'm done recording, and usually a story starts to form. And I don't do a normal talk show. I like to formulate and tell stories that normally run about 40 minutes. And I try to find clips and formulate them in my commentary in a way that they're all relative and cohesive to each other so that my story flows. But since Tuesday night, that hasn't been happening for me. I see clips of people saying things that I like, that I find encouraging, and I think, yeah, I can put a story together on them. And then I think, what difference does it make? We lost. And then everything falls apart. Nothing seems to click. Nothing seems to fit. And it's not just that we lost, but rather to whom we lost. It's not just that we lost an election. If we had lost to John McCain or Mitt Romney, yes, I would have been disappointed, but not despondent, because neither Romney nor McCain were clear and present dangers or existential threats to this country. Donald Trump is. Yeah, back then we'd have policy disagreements for sure, but I wouldn't be concerned about our democracy and our Constitution. I played a short clip from Joe Biden's first speech since the election yesterday, and what did we hear? Orderly and peaceful transition. I listened to his whole speech last night. It didn't get any better. Yesterday, after a conversation with the caller Brandon, I started thinking out loud, and I said, I felt that many of those who voted for the Orange Trader on Tuesday were simply not aware of everything they had just signed on to. They may have thought that Trump might improve on an economy the Economist said is now the envy of the world, because the right-wing propaganda fascist hate media certainly wouldn't have told him that quote. And if they did, they would have proceeded to excoriate and delegitimize the Economist. I also feel that maybe they're also not aware of Trump's dictatorial fascist inclinations. But back to the economy, I want you to hear something MSNBC host and economic analyst Stephanie Ruhle said yesterday on the perception of the economy. It really was quite excellent. And we'll hear the question my gal Nicole Wallace asked Stephanie, and then Steph's wonderful and accurate response.
It is also true, though, that the perception of the economy under Biden is what provided the greatest weight to his approval rating. It's probably the largest factor that drove it to its low numbers. Why is that so different from the actual reality of the economy?
Because the fact of the matter is that we came out of the darkest hole, which was COVID, and we then experienced the biggest inflation spike that most of us have in our entire lives. So I can sit here all day with accurate data that talks about jobs and wages. And remind you, even when wages go up, we credit ourselves. When I get a raise, I say, well, it's because I am so good at my job. But when life costs more, I blame the government. Right. And so I can give you all the data that says we had the best economic recovery in the world, which we did. And when President Biden tried to tout that with Bidenomics, everybody flipped out on him, saying, how could you do that? Don't you know we're suffering? Which they are. Because as you said, rent, mortgages, food, try to go on vacation, all of it costs so much more. So you've got scores of people across this country who are not jumping on board to be on Team MAGA and who don't hate Kamala Harris, but they're just saying, my life costs too much money. And I've never experienced this kind of inflation in my life. Who was the person who was in office? And it was Joseph R. Biden. And that's not unique to the United States. We just saw that in practically every election in developed countries where the country just said, why does life cost this much? And they're not connecting the dots of, well, we're coming out of the COVID hole. This is where we are. And that's where we find ourselves today.
I found that encouraging. What Steph said is that it wasn't a flotilla of people flocking to the MAGAverse, but rather people short-sightedly, but understandably so to a degree, saying things cost too much. I'm voting for the other guy. And like Steph said, they weren't connecting the dots as to why things are more expensive now. Which is why I said yesterday, a few moments ago, and I'll say again now, and this won't be the last time. I suspect they were not fully aware, if at all, of everything else they signed up for with Trump. Maybe not even economically. I suspect they were not fully aware of everything else. They were just like Trump, living in the moment and not playing the long game. And right now, I have to play for you what happened right after Steph concluded her remarks. Former Republican Congressman David Jolly said, "That's right," under his breath, very quietly. And Steph asked him, "What'd you say?" And when Jolly repeated what he said, namely that Steph was right, Steph said, "I know," and something to the effect of, "I just wanted you to say it again so everybody could hear you say I was right." And that led to one of those non-scripted television moments that I hope puts a smile on your face. And watch how beet red David Jolly's face turns. And what's funny is that there's so much overspeak, I couldn't really understand what anybody was saying. But that only increased its TV adorability for me. What can I say? I'm easy to please. I'm also easy, period, but that's another story for another time. Oh, and this clip will also demonstrate why I love me some Stephanie Ruhle. She's smart, she's gorgeous. Underneath the sometimes baggy, sometimes dark clothes she wears is just a stunning figure, and she's funny. Trust me, it doesn't get much better than that.
And they're not connecting the dots of, well, we're coming out of the COVID hole, this is where we are, and that's where we find ourselves today.
That's right.
What'd you say?
I said you're right.
I know, I just wanted to But this week, no one's saying that to me, so I just really needed to hear it again. I haven't heard it.
We're all a little raw.
It's just one compliment. I had to take
You're
it.
correct.
I love that. Yeah.
You are safe.
So let's translate.
Adorable, yes. Improvised, spontaneous mayhem on live television. It put a smile on my face where there hasn't been one for many days. I hope it put a smile on yours. There just hasn't been much to smile about lately, folks, let's be honest. And now we'll hear David Jolly's follow-up to what we just heard Steph say. I found this encouraging as well.
So let's translate Steph being right into politics, because I think Democrats need a little boost in the arm right now. Winning doesn't make you right, and losing doesn't make you wrong.
Oh, thank you.
Truly. I mean, all this introspection of Democrats, of course, we'll talk about it. But just because you lost a race doesn't make your values wrong. And it doesn't mean...
Or your candidate.
Or your candidate. And it doesn't mean you need to reconsider your values. Steph and I talked about this last night. First of all, the now minority political coalition in the country is as strong as it's ever been. It's at 48 or 49% of the country. So it's not like somehow it got wiped out. I also know this. I spent the last year visiting with Democratic clubs in the state of Florida. And I know this as a journey, as a former Republican now visiting with Democratic clubs in Florida. The values of today's Democratic Party are the values that will take our country forward. They're the values that protect individual liberty, freedom, and economy for all people. They're the values that represent fairness in our economy and in our culture. And they're the values that lift everybody up. That is not the Republican Party. So this introspection of what did we do wrong, I think is a procedural and tactical question. It is not a values-based question. And Democrats today need to be as proud of their values as they were yesterday. And I think what Steph said is interesting because it also threads a little bit with Matthew's point. It is true Biden's numbers were upside down, but the issue may have also been that across the globe in developed countries, this anti-incumbent wave in a post-pandemic economy, I mean, what we learned is among all of the issues, and we knew this might be the case. I think some of us were trying to convince ourselves there were more important issues. But what we learned on Tuesday night is the economy was the most important issue to people. And they could negotiate away some of the other questions about Donald Trump's fitness. And the reality is, over the last 8 years, Republicans better spoke to the economic anxieties of middle America than Democrats did. But that doesn't mean that Democrats aren't right on the issues. And so I don't, we talked about this last night. I don't think an overcorrection for Democrats is in order. In many ways, it's keep doing what you're doing, and let's find a way to be more effective at it.
Yeah, keep doing what you're doing, but find a way to be more effective at it. Yeah, as in telling the American people what you're doing. Taking advantage of your bullhorn and bully pulpit. But here's the problem. Telling them now is redundant. The election's over. We lost. And for the next 4 years, who will control the aforementioned gigantic bullhorn and bully pulpit the American presidency affords you, and also exploit it to the friggin' hilt? Donald friggin' Trump will. And the media, both the right-wing propaganda, fascist hate media, and the mainstream media, will race there breathlessly and on bended knee await the commander-in-chief to open his mouth. Given that reality, it will be difficult, if not impossible, for Democrats to take back any part of the Trump narrative. I suspect for the next 4 years, Democrats will be relegated to what at times seems to be their favorite pastime, writing sternly worded letters. But maybe they'll surprise me. You will forgive me if I don't hold my breath. First of all, Democrats are Democrats. Second, the mere logistics of another Trump presidency will not be in their favor. And by the way, when Trump does filibuster the cameras and mics, what will drool from his lips will be the same kind of heinous lies and narcissistic braggadocio Trump has spewed on a daily basis for the entirety of his miserable, wretched life. And then, oh boy, and then we'll have to endure more of the same from Trump whisperers who will either tell us what he really meant or that we're taking his comments out of context. I honestly don't know if I can handle 4 more years of that. I really don't. I suppose I could if I had to, but I don't have to, and I'm sure as hell not sure I want to. More on that on Monday when I've had a weekend to ponder it. Also, I have a bit prepared I don't think we're going to get to today, but it plays off something you heard Stephanie Ruhle say, and it is probably the best post-debate analysis I have heard. And the more I look at my notes here, the more I'm realizing we're not going to get to it today. Even if I started it now, I think we'd run out of time before I finished it. So I don't want to do that. It's just too good. It lifted me up a lot, and that hasn't been an easy task this week. Nothing has lifted me up. And I'm not saying this did a complete 180, but it helped. So we'll save that for Monday. But getting back to my point of Trump voters not knowing exactly what they signed on for, just to show you how a good writer or a good collaboration of writers can say so much in one sentence, I want you to look at this one from the New York Times yesterday. Look at the headline, quote, 4 more years of unpredictability, the world prepares for Trump's return, end quote. Jeez, that sounds like a trailer for a gruesome horror movie. And sadly, that's pretty close to what we're about to get. Friday the 13th, the return of Michael Myers. November the 5th, the return of Donald Trump. There's not a whole lot of space between those two, either artistically or realistically, except that one of them isn't opposed to wearing a mask. But here's the sentence from the story, quote, in nations that leaned on the United States to defeat fascism during World War II, there is still a sense of shock that American voters have elected a felon who has prompted threats of violence against journalists and said he would use the courts and the military against domestic enemies, end quote. One sentence one sentence that said so much. I'll repeat it. In nations that leaned on the United States to defeat fascism during World War II, there is still a sense of shock that American voters have elected a felon who has promoted threats of violence against journalists and said he would use the courts and the military against domestic enemies, end quote. Again, rarely do you see one single sentence that says so much. And I fully acknowledge the belief among many members of Trump's brain-dead MAGA cult base that the press, sorry, where's my head at? That the press has treated their dear cult leader just so abominably, and thus they deserve to be attacked either physically and or thrown in jail, because they're fake news. Which I have to say is such a lazy and slovenly slogan on which to base your support for someone. Fake news. First, that was just Donald Trump's half-witted extension of the liberal media lie. Second, there's no such thing as fake news. There is news and there are lies. And third, there is no bigger purveyor of lies than the guy who coined the phrase fake news. How ironic is that? Not to mention just sad. I played you a clip towards the end of last week wherein we saw and heard Trump boasting at one of his clandemic rallies that the place was full to capacity. Thousands couldn't get in, and that no one ever leaves his rallies early. And as we saw in the clip, it was far from being full. There were plenty of empty seats, and there were a bunch of people leaving early. And then Trump brought up the media, which of course he called the fake news media, and the crowd immediately started booing said media, when they could see with their own friggin' eyes that the venue was not full and that people were leaving early. But I guess when you've been chanting fake news for 9 long years, facts to the contrary mean nothing. And if Tuesday's result proved anything, it was that facts don't matter. And further to our discussion yesterday of how much blame Joe Biden deserves for Kamala Harris's defeat on Tuesday, I heard something from Matthew Dowd yesterday, the chief strategist for George W. Bush's 2004 re-election campaign. And what Matthew said speaks to that premise. And again, it also provided some encouragement, I thought. And I'll say this in advance, what Dowd says regarding Joe Biden, it kind of echoes what I said, even though he doesn't address it. Confused? We'll watch, then discuss.
Ends up on election day with the same number they have in approval. So Barack Obama in 2012 had a 51% approval, got 51% of the vote. In 2004, George W. Bush had a 51% approval, got 51% of the vote. When Jimmy Carter lost, he had a 42% approval. He got 42% of the vote in 1980. Every single time. And even a vice president. Think of 1988 when Herbert Walker Bush ran against Mike Dukakis. Ronald Reagan's approval rating was 55%. Herbert Walker Bush got 53%. So the expectation with those fundamentals, ignoring all of the other data, and that approval was driven by perceptions of the economy, as you said to start the show, the expectation would be that a candidate for president by the Democrats or vice president would get around 40 or 41% of the vote. The Vice President Harris, is going to end up with 48% of the vote, which means for the first time in modern history, she's going to outrun the incumbent president's approval by 8 points. That's never happened before. Never happened at all. You look at every geography, you look at all the demography, and you say, what happened? The most predictive result, most predictive factor of how people voted, no matter who they were, was their approval of President Biden. And so for me, when you look at this, and the interesting thing is in the 7 swing states, the vice president ran 4 points better than she did in all the other states when you look at where Donald Trump gained, which means he gained 7 points. Donald Trump gained 7 points in all the other 43 states and only gained 3 points in the swing states, which means her campaign worked. It just couldn't overcome the weight and anchor of Joe Biden's approval number. And that's fine. We might argue with whether voters should or should not. But when you're a voter who's out there trying to make a decision, and they can't pay the rent, as you say, the groceries are too expensive, they don't know what they're going to do about health care or daycare, they have all those things, and they're being told, oh, forget about all that, vote, quote unquote, on behalf of democracy. Well, we might think as individuals who are blessed in our lives that we're able to overcome that and we'll be able to do that. But most people in their lives have to focus on just what's right in front of them and the feeding of their children and the care of their parents and all of that. And so that's fundamentals, the perception of the economy, which then moves into the perception of the incumbent president, means that Vice President Harris actually way overperformed what you would expect.
Again, I found that uplifting. Oh, and during that clip, the camera went fuzzy, so we'll do a little internal machinations here. And voila, you get the real me, unfuzzied. Okay, oh, by the way, I'm just looking at the clock here. We're getting towards the end of this show, folks. If you have something you would like to weigh in on, something you need to get off your chest before you head into the weekend, a misery you'd like to share, an elation you'd like to share, now's probably a good time to do it. The number here at the station is 221-7283. That's area code 702-221-SAVE, as in save. Why didn't we save our democracy? Okay, so Matthew said Harris was anchored to Biden's low approval rating, to which I would take it a step further and ask, again, going back to yesterday's discussion, what exactly did Joe Biden do to counter those ratings or to alleviate the feelings of those who gave him those ratings? Again, he had and still has the biggest bullhorn and bully pulpit in the world. And he just didn't use it. And not that it matters, but he's still got 2.5 months with which to use it. And how does he use it the first time after the election? To tell us he called Trump and congratulated him on his, it's hard to let the word come out of my mouth, victory, invited him to the White House and told him everyone in the Biden administration would help in his transition. What, you gonna serve him crumpets and tea too, Joe? And then, of course, Biden said we had to turn our constitutional republic over to someone who said our Constitution should be terminated. And so, democracy's march to the ovens continues unabated, and I would say even abetted by far too many Democrats. And perhaps it was because in the last year, the Biden team didn't feel comfortable with him speaking in public, in which case that speaks to the legitimate complaint that he should have withdrawn sooner. All valid arguments. It doesn't change the travesty that occurred on Tuesday night, but if we're trying to pluck some encouraging signs and nuggets to lessen the sting of what happened, I thought what Matthew Dowd just said might provide that. I hope it did. And finally, Dowd offered this.
And so I think presenting information, giving people it in a humble way, here's the situation in this. But I think all of this idea is Harris could have done X, Y, and Z. She could have done this, or they should have done this, or they could have been on Joe Rogan, or they should have, is all BS. It's all BS. The fact that she ran as good a campaign in this environment as she could have. My theory, or my thought is, if Joe Biden's job approval rating was at 44%, Vice President Harris would be President-elect Harris. If his job approval was in the mid-40s, what kind of campaign she ran here. The question, I think, and we won't know an answer to it, is was this baked in 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when Joe Biden decided not to be the transition president and decided to run for re-election. And once that decision was made, that no matter what happened turned days ago, and I actually think that Vice President Harris was put in an untenable box that she couldn't get out of at that moment, and she did her best as she can. And as I said, she over-exceeded expectations by 7 or 8 points. Is once that decision was made, was this election, no matter what was said or done about Donald Trump, pretty much baked in?
Good points. So again, Dowd is putting much blame on Joe Biden and his dismal approval ratings. Unfair given how substantial Biden's presidency has been, but fair given how little Biden did to inform the people of his achievements. 221-7283 is our call-in number here at the station, folks. If you'd like to chat, would you? Do you? 702 area code 221 SAVE. I got to tell you, folks, I'm in a little better mood today. Not that the sting has worn off, but it's Friday. And I cannot remember probably in my entire life when I have looked forward to a Friday more so than I am today. And I don't know what your plans for the weekend are. One thing I plan on doing, doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I'm going to plan on doing it, is catching up on sleep. This has not been a good sleep week for me. The eyes probably show it, even with makeup. But I'm telling you, if I can, I plan on doing a whole lot of sleeping and maybe even dreaming. Stephanie Rule, did you hear that? 221-7283 is the number, 702 area code 221-SAVE. I almost feel like I've had a couple drinks today. That's how, and I don't. I haven't had an alcoholic beverage in years. How sad is that? And I'm not a teetotaler. I'm a whiskey drinker. CC and Coke is my drink. I haven't had one for years. I feel like I've had 2 or 3 just this morning. And who knows, maybe I did. Let's head to the phones, and we'll start with our resident psychologist, Carl. You're first. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, Doug. Hi. I'm glad to hear you're feeling a little better anyway.
Oh, alcohol is the great equalizer.
Yeah, well, a couple of more shots, you'll be perfect. Listen, this worry, you know what worries me a lot more than almost anything else? I'll be real quick. Harris called Trump to Harris called Trump to congratulate him. Biden called Trump to congratulate him. You know who else called Trump real quick to congratulate him?
Bibi.
Can you believe this? He congratulated him? Yeah?
Yeah.
He congratulated him?
Of course I can believe it, Carl. We would be horrifically disappointed and wouldn't believe it if they told us Putin hadn't called. And of course, so did Orban. Orban was there before Putin.
Yeah, and in some words, he says, Putin, now we will be able to basically control the world. Is in so many words is what he said. And mark my words that Trump is going to try to pull out of NATO, which is one of our only protections for other countries. So Russia can invade other countries.
Well, NATO is the most effective alliance the world has ever seen. But Trump doesn't look at it that way. Trump doesn't look at it that way. He looks at the leaders of democracies as weak. He likes strongmen. So, yeah, he has no use for NATO or the leaders of the countries that are in it, including us.
The final point, yeah. And the final point, people think that all prices of things are going to go down now that Trump is in office. You watch him go up because when he puts these so-called tariffs on products, the country who's selling these products to our country is only going to raise the price of their product to cover the tariff costs. And then we're going to have to raise the prices on the products we sell. So you watch what's going to happen.
Yep. And then people will say, but I thought I was going to be paying less.
Yeah, you're going to be paying more. You watch and see.
That's because
Anyway.
the average American citizen doesn't have much more, if any more, of an understanding of how tariffs actually work than Donald Trump. And even Trump, they keep saying he doesn't know how tariffs work. I don't believe that. I believe he knows how tariffs work. He just doesn't care. He's looking at the money that will be siphoned into the American government, which he plans to pilfer.
Yeah. Do people really think that a country whose products or the price is raised to them isn't going to raise the price selling it to us? And then we have
Well, yes, some of them do, Carl, because they think the exporting nation, as in China, pays the tariff. They don't. They never have. They never will. The guy who accepts the product, whenever it comes in, wherever it comes in, the importer of record pays the tariff to the United States government. And then what do you think the company does? Suck up the loss they've just spent with the government? No. Generally, they raise their prices. That's how tariffs work.
Well,
and Trump knows that.
I'll let you go. Now that we have President Trump and Putin, it's going to be a co-presidency. I hope everybody's happy now. The ones who voted for him. Anyway,
I hear you, Carl. Have a good weekend. You take care.
Have a good weekend. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Let's head back to the phones and we'll talk to Big Bad John. You're next. Thanks for calling.
Hey, Doug.
Hey, John.
I'm still wallowed in my depression, and there's going to be quite a few alcoholic beverages imbibed this weekend.
I hear you, brother.
I think Kamala ran a great race. I mean, seriously, I don't think you can criticize her at all.
No, I don't.
I think there's a couple things. I think the old guard at the Democratic Party needs to be eliminated. Nancy Pelosi needs to get the hell out of D.C. Chuck Schumer is weak and pathetic, and he needs to get the hell out of D.C. It's time for a complete makeover. And, you know, I love AOC. I think she's hot as hell. I think she's on the right track with a lot of things. But the party just got pulled too far to the left. And the Democratic Party needs to do an audit. Remember, the Republicans did that many, many years ago. And just need to understand that immigration reform must be done. That's the fatal mistake that Biden made, is he let too many immigrants in, and he got outplayed by Trump killing that immigration bill. He got outplayed. You've noted many times Biden had the bully pulpit. He could have handled that so much better than the way he did, and he got outplayed. And now we have to suffer through this for hopefully just a 4-year period.
I hear you, John. But one thing I want to tell you: be sure to listen in on Monday, because, as I say, I've got this bit I didn't want to get into today because it was too long. But it is the best post-election analysis I've heard, and it put everything in perspective for me. So before we, lay too much blame at different factions of the party, wait till you hear this report. I think it'll change your mind a bit.
Okay, you got it.
Hey, I appreciate it, John. Have a good weekend and enjoy those alcoholic beverages. Have several for me, brother.
Yeah, I might head to the weed store too. Might see some edibles in my future too.
I hear you, brother. Thanks for calling, John. I appreciate it. Yeah, folks, it's Friday. The idea of I'm just messing with my cord here behind my back, which is of no interest to you radio listeners. Probably not to you social media listeners either. But it's Friday. I am overjoyed. I am ecstatic. I am thrilled. I haven't looked forward to a Friday this much in ever. Really. This has been a hard friggin' week, folks. I have been despondent. I mean, seriously, I take this stuff way too seriously. I bury myself and enmesh myself in this stuff. And then when it all just blows up and falls apart into tiny little pieces in one night when it shouldn't have, and an objectively superior candidate loses to a felon and a rapist and a traitor, That just blew my world all to hell. So yeah, it's Friday. I'm going to recover. Hope you do the same. We'll do this all over again Monday, hopefully with you. Until then, take care.
Doug Basham.
Welcome to Hash House A Go-Go, where we've been serving farm food and crafted cocktails for over 2